Hey, Professor Sills here, and how are you this afternoon? It is Saturday at about 12:30, October 6th, and I wanted to give you another brief weather briefing. I wanted to thank those of you who responded to me by email and actually did go to look at the NCEP link that I gave you. This is again the GFS model. It is the preferred model that gives the most accurate forecast, does not mean it's always right, and you do need to interpret it. One of the other tips that I'll give you is these models run 4 times a day, and the two primary runs are at 0Z and 12Z, meaning at 8 p.m. and at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. That will again become 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Eastern Time when we back up to Eastern Standard Time. And that'll happen, I guess, in about a month or whenever Congress decides to do it. So, what I look for when I look at this and when the weather starts getting interesting, and interesting to me, of course, is snowstorms, um, I look for consistency from model run to model run to model run. So, in other words, what I'm looking for is I had a student email me and say, looks like there's a major storm building up like 16 days in the future. Well, first of all, when you look that far into the future, the computer model is a very, very limited value. It's only going to give you the most general information. The second thing is what I would look for is if it shows up on a 12Z run, is it on the next 0Z run just 12 hours earlier? And is it on the following 12Z run? In other words, does the computer model get an idea in its head, if we gave it a personality, and run with it? Or is it just some kind of fleeting information? Because a computer model is no better than the data it acquires. What is it really doing? It's acquiring information from observation stations all over the world, surface observations and upper air observations, looking at 5,000 feet up, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 feet above the surface. And what it's also doing then is applying the current state of the atmosphere to the known laws of physics. In other words, how does air move? And based on our understandings, it projects what the atmosphere should look like 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours into the future, all the way to 384 hours. The reason that there are different computer models is because that some computer models are based, they emphasize different equations of the atmosphere. There are 7 equations of the atmosphere, and there are like 10 variables, which for any of you that know algebra, when you have 7 equations and 10 variables, you have an infinite number of solutions. So what meteorologists do is they have different models that emphasize different actions of the atmosphere, some of which are more easily measurable and some of which are not. Over time, the GFS has shown itself to be a pretty good model. Now let's look at the current analysis. Forgive the cough. And by the way, from a show on Dr. Oz yesterday, I think I finally got a handle on what this is about. It's called silent reflux. And I have my own YouTube channel. It's Blast Off Today, youtube.com, Blast Off Today. That's mostly for my other business. But I do have a couple of videos that I'm going to have up there later on today that were made today on October 6th that talk about what I learned on Dr. Oz's show. So if you're one of the people walking around with a postnasal drip, raspy voice, bit of a cough, you might want to check that out. Anyway, what we see here is a general pattern where I see a dip in the thickness lines showing me cold air through the eastern Rocky Mountains, the Great Plains, and the upper Midwest, and much milder air to the south, of course, as one would expect at this time of year. Now, something else interesting that I want to point out, and you're going to learn a lot of geography in this class. I am currently in Grand Junction, Colorado, which is roughly where the arrow is pointing. It's western Colorado. It's on the western slopes of the Rocky Mountains. Over here is Denver. It's in a region that we call the Front Range. It's the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. Now, Denver is east of the Continental Divide, and Grand Junction is west of the Continental Divide. This polar air mass, meaning that it is cool air, a high-pressure system originating from northern Canada, sliding down into the United States, and very soon you'll see it's going to slide south and eastward towards you, and you have a turn towards cooler weather happening in New Jersey, will typically bank up against the Rocky Mountains, which are roughly right here. And notice the packing of the thickness lines, meaning that they're pretty close together between here and here. See how tightly packed they are? Now what that tells me is there's a pretty good temperature gradient across that line. And we observed that yesterday here in Grand Junction. It was in the mid 70s. At the same time, east of the mountains and east of the line in Denver, roughly the same altitude, it was in the upper 30s. So while we were 75 out here, it was 37 degrees in Denver. Now that's some of the same cool air headed your way, and watch how the model evolves. Now this is from October 6th, Saturday morning at 8 a.m., and this is the current validation hour. In other words, it's 0 hour. So let me click it forward, and I'm going to toggle it one step at a time and hopefully get this thing moving. That's 3 hours, 6 hours, and just look at the progress of the 540 thickness. That is the southernmost blue line, dashed blue line. Look at its progress eastward, and that's an indication that the cool air is headed towards New Jersey, and I trust I don't have to point out where New Jersey is on the map. So we're now 15 hours in the future, 18 hours, 21, this is painful, my computer should be faster than this, 24, and you can see the 540 line is now entering into northwestern Pennsylvania. So there's apparently precipitation moving into New Jersey. It will be in the form of rain because the 540 line, as of 36 hours, now let's think about this. This is Saturday morning that this model was originated. So 36 hours from 8 a.m. Saturday morning would be 8 p.m. Sunday evening. So if you're seeing this before Sunday evening, what we see is rain moving into New Jersey, the 540 line being roughly over Glens Falls, New York, southwestward to south central Pennsylvania, meaning that areas north and west of here might actually see some snow, especially up in the Adirondacks, I'm sure, possibly near Binghamton, and up into northern Vermont. So as I push this forward in time, 39 hours. And what you're going to see happening here is the 540 line got close enough to almost kiss northwestern New Jersey. Now, again, remember, it's only going to produce snow if there's enough moisture in the atmosphere. Just because the 540 line gets near you doesn't mean it'll snow. And now you see the 540 line beginning to retreat. So what you see happening here is I'm looking at the thickness lines from hour to hour begin to move northward a little bit. And that means you get into the model of forecasting where the next day will be not quite as cool as the previous day. So it'll be cooler and then milding out or warming up as we go into early next week. I'm now up to early Tuesday morning for next week. But what I also see here is more cool air building up over eastern Montana and North Dakota. A new surge of cool air with the 540 line. Again, it's not that it's a magic line. It's just that it happens to be a dividing line between rain and snow. And it's easy to pick out because the next line below it is red and this one's blue. So we can track it more easily. And what we see happening, I'm up at, we're pushing 72 hours now. And you can see it begin to dive southward. And I haven't looked this far out, so I don't know what's coming up here. You're seeing it as I'm seeing it, or I'm seeing it as you're seeing it, and I'm calling it as you're seeing it. I see this cool air diving into the Dakotas, diving into Iowa, and again, not making much of an incursion into Colorado. So it looks like the coolest air is just going to miss the Rockies entirely. But you can see the real cool air is lining up. You've got a thickness here of 498, which is a very, very cold temperature. That's air which is very compressed, indicating cold air, but also nowhere near the United States. I mean, I got to go looking up over the Arctic Circle to find it. But as I look now out about 99 hours, I see the 540 pushing into Indiana and Ohio. And it's working its way south and eastward again. So clearly this is another cold front that will move through New Jersey. And it looks like it'll happen sometime around, this is Thursday at 0Z, which means Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. So it might be Wednesday evening, it might be Thursday morning, thereabouts. Should be your next round of cool air to come in. and the 540 line is just kissing northwest Jersey. Now, again, I got to point out this green represents precipitation that fell in the previous 6 hours. So just because you see a 540 line and green surrounding it does not mean it is snowing. It means that there may have been rainfall in the previous 6 hours, and that rainfall has since moved off to the north and east. And think about why that is in light of your studies of tropical systems. And in fact, this is now 6 hours later at 114 hours, and you can see that while the 540 line is still touching northwestern New Jersey, the precipitation has moved on. That tells me it's likely the rain will have shut off or stopped before the air is cold enough to convert it over to snow, or for the rain to turn to snow, putting that in simple English. What I see here is an incursion of cool air, and I see another incursion, looks like it's ready to start up, and a low pressure system here. And remember, around cyclones, whether it's tropical or extratropical being those over the mid latitudes, the circulation is like this. So we have warm air being pushed up ahead of it, cool air being pulled down behind it. That's an important concept. This is not enrichment. That's an important concept. Warm air pushed up ahead, cold air pulled down behind. So let me just race through this. And again, I have not looked further into what this pattern is, but it looks to me like more cold air is going to work its way into the States, which is exactly what is supposed to happen during the month of October. The month of October is where you move from summer-like conditions to almost winter-like conditions, especially over the northern third of the United States, which New Jersey is just tipping the northern third. That'd be mostly New York and New England in your part of the country. You can also see that this is deepened into a very, very strong storm, which is going to help wrap cold air around it and push it down towards New Jersey. So I haven't seen the movement here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this 540 gets all the way down into New Jersey at this time. But again, it is only the middle of October. The likelihood of any snow occurring when that happens is slim because the air will be cool and dry. You see a high pressure system moving here towards here, which will bring with it dry air. This moisture here is mostly what we call lake effect. This is picking up the moisture off the lakes and dumping it on the western slopes of the Adirondacks and into the Adirondacks and into New England. So there might be some snow showers over here happening at this time. And this would be 144 hours out. That's like a week from now. That would be October 12. And again, the further out in the future you go, you can't pinpoint time or exact patterns. But we can say it's going to be cool and breezy over New England about a week from now. That's safe to indicate. And New Jersey. We'll see that. So it looks like the 540 line is working its way into southern New York. May not quite reach New Jersey. This model used to go every 6 hours. It's now going every 3 hours within the first week and a half. And that's probably almost too detailed information that we don't need. But hey, what are you going to do? So it looks like we have a storm system building up in the middle of the country. Traditionally, those storms move in this direction and carry warmer air up into the east. So it looks like the coolest of the air incursion happens right around next weekend and then should begin retreating as this storm system in the middle of the country migrates to the east and north. And we'll see if that in fact happens. And notice the 540 is retreating. The higher thicknesses are occurring over New Jersey. Temperatures will rise over next weekend and continue to rise. And there's no chance of snow, it looks like, anywhere in the United States. The 540 is way up into Canada. Any of the precipitation falling over the Great Lakes here is going to be moderate to heavy rainfall. And again, this is projecting way out, so it may or may not be an accurate vision of what we see in the future. But we would look at subsequent model runs to see, in fact, if this is repeated. This again looks like a fairly strong storm, works its way north and eastward, and behind it, we'll see if it pulls in any cooler air. I see a strong Pacific storm developing, and those have a habit of bringing cooler air into the northwest, and maybe that's what's going to happen after the middle of the month. We're now looking way into the future. We're 204 hours in. At 216 hours, it just continues the pattern. Again, I don't see anything all that exciting building up. This storm has weakened. It may not push that cool air down. We'll see what happens here. 252 hours in, nope, looks like we're in just a fairly mild pattern across the entire country with another shot of pretty good precipitation forecast to happen, but again, who knows? This far out, we're onto the 17th of October. Now it looks like we have finally another incursion of cooler air into the U.S., and that's around the 18th. And we're into our last few panels. We're 312 hours in. 324. It looks like we have another polar air mass that is sliding down on the east side of the Rockies. It brings the 540 line into central Colorado again. And again, if this were to validate a couple of weekends from now, there'd be more snow in the eastern Rockies, maybe east of the Continental Divide, but west of the Continental Divide looks still mild. And again, the cooler air is riding north and east and largely avoiding New Jersey. And as I carry this into the last couple of panels, 348 hours, 360 hours. This is a fairly typical pattern of the cooler air mass dipping into the center of the nation, and it looks like it begins to retreat. So again, the cooler air may or may not even make it into New Jersey. And again, we're looking very far out into the future. And it is just October. We're not looking for major snowstorms anywhere in the country just yet. I hope not yet, because I've still got some travel to do before November where I settle down. And looking at the final panel, 384 hours out, looks like a fairly benign pattern with a polar air mass over the upper Midwest, cool air there, somewhat milder in the east, and fairly mild in the mountainous west. Okay, well, that'll do it. And thank you, and keep up on top of your work. Okay, exam coming up soon.